Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle, the simple and AI-powered rewards and recognition platform for employee engagement.
Workplace investigations are much like a game of chess. Each move can significantly impact trust, legal responsibilities, and the very fabric of a company's culture. So, fasten your seatbelts as we delve deep into the course of workplace investigation, shedding light on the profound impact it can have on workplaces, and most importantly, how tactical HR can help. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. I'm your host, Shushmita, and today we have with us Jennifer Watson, the Vice President, Human Resources at LASSO. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
So, happy to be welcoming you in this episode of the Vantage Influencers Podcast. And we are committed to, bringing our guests some meaningful conversations with experts from across the corporate world. So, first of all, our guests would want to know a bit about you, Jennifer, and what you're famous for.
Well, I think famous is a very liberal term. Thank you for that. So I would say I started as a teacher. So I, taught inner city Nashville after college and learned more about myself there than I can probably even go into on this episode. But was a 7th grade math teacher and then an administrator. And I was speaking on a panel about teacher readiness, and the head of HR for a Fortune 91 retail company approached me and said, "Hey, we'd love if you could come be a recruiter for us." And I kind of was like, yeah, whatever, man. Like, I don't know who you are, and I'm a teacher. So sure enough, 5 months later, I joined that company and was there for 9 years. I call myself homegrown HR because I was a marketing major. I don't have any HR certifications, but I think a lot of how I have learned and progressed in my career is being a student, running to what scares me. And so I held a variety of roles there, from recruiting to employee relations to typical business partners supporting stores, distribution centers. And then most recently went to a tech startup company, which has been so interesting, going from having, 200 HR peers to myself. So that's kind of the whole gamut of my career.
Brilliant. Would you like to tell something about LASSO HR? Because I can see that you mentioned that we're a people platform of the entertainment industry. So what exactly is that?
Yeah. So I didn't know all of this until I joined the company, but I think every business meeting, every concert, every, event you go to that has all of the people and things like that, they run them on Excel spreadsheets, which I just think is so interesting, from booking the people to through the event, which seems kind of crazy because these events have so many moving pieces. And so our founder decided, why are we still running this way? And so we created a platform that streamlines everything. So it does workforce management, it does payroll, it does travel, timekeeping, it does e-signature, all the way to, managing a project end to end. So show end to end, to managing the crew. So there's just so many capabilities, and it creates just such a great experience for these production companies. So that's kind of what we do. And it's really exciting to be at a company that's creating such a needed solution for the events and entertainment industry.
Right. Brilliant, Jennifer. So, let's start off. And today's episode is about workplace investigations and the role of tactical HR. So starting off, let's set the stage for our listeners who may not be familiar with the term. Jennifer, can you describe what we mean by tactical HR, particularly in the context of, managing workplace issues and conflicts and maintaining a harmonious environment?
Yeah, so I think of tactical HR, to put it in the simplest terms, and I'm sure this is not the most comprehensive definition, but I think of it as anything that you can put on a list and cross off. That is tactical. It's the day-to-day. It's the things you have to get done to run a business. but it's not necessarily strategy, vision, long-term solutions, and problem solving the root cause. So that's, when I think about tactical HR, it's things such as filling a position or, doing an interview for an investigation or processing payroll. Things like that are very tactical, as opposed to forward strategic thinking of how do we train employees to make better decisions, or how do we increase our brand online so we get the top candidates. So there's definitely a difference there.
So is it like a blend of traditional HR responsibilities with a more strategic and forward-thinking initiatives that you mentioned?
Oh, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what it is. Today, HR is very different than it was even 10 years ago when I started. When I started, we were with recruiting, we self-reported our openings. We said, oh, we think this person's going to be a fit, but we never looked at the ROI of that person, things like that. I think now there's so much more data, there's so much more visibility that you have to be able to blend tactical HR with those forward-thinking initiatives. It's kind of a non-negotiable at this point, but there are always tactical portions of every job. So.
That's quite insightful. So moving on to a more specific aspect, maybe. I'm curious to hear about your experience in this field, Jennifer. How do you see the role of HR, evolving over the years, especially in the light of increasing workplace diversity and complexity? Can you share how this change has impacted the handling of sensitive issues like workplace investigations?
Yeah. I think it's so funny because when I distinctly remember growing up, my dad said to me, never go into HR because when there's cuts in a business, they cut HR first. And back then that was probably true. But now I think HR is such a critical part of the business. And I think, the events of the past few years have really shone a light on how critical that is and how essential it is that everyone in the business understands HR functions, training capabilities, and uses them as partners. I've seen a lot of articles recently about CEOs going through HR rotation within their company or coming from some type of HR function, because I think it just is sound business to understand the people side of the business as much as the metrics and the business side of the house. You can drive results, but if you don't have the people to do it and you treat everyone poorly and you don't have engagement, opportunities or promotions, then your company isn't going to work. So I think it's definitely become much more of a forefront than my dad used to think. So.
True. So, and talking about handling of sensitive issues in the workplace investigation topic that we have, taken up today. So that's definitely a very, complex situation, and it's safe to assume several objectives are in play, right? Could you shed some light on what do you consider to be the primary goals of an investigation?
Yeah, I think thinking high level, the primary goal is to help people be better. And I know that sounds a little weird for a workplace investigation, but I truly believe that people want to do the right thing and people want to make the right decisions and show up to work and perform the best that they can. So that, I think if you have that at the core of every investigation, you can become a little jaded in that role. I understand that, but that is the point of it. You're trying to figure out a situation that might have gone awry, and how can you leave everybody feeling or understanding the expectations or what they need to do differently in the future. Now, there's a lot that goes into that, but I think that is the end result. Now, sometimes that might end with someone losing their job because they made a really, really bad decision that cannot be accepted in your company. I do think even with people like that, there's an opportunity to give them that feedback of why it was unacceptable and how they can do things differently. I think we owe that to people. And unfortunately, I wish we could get ahead of it before an investigation, but that's not always the case. And so using that as an opportunity to really to help them understand, I think is the goal for me, at least.
Yeah. So in the broader scenario, if you think workplace investigations, they can lead to legal consequences, but a well conducted investigation it is to promote a positive, a respectful, and an inclusive organizational culture as a whole, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that can come out in many formats, from the way that you ask questions during the investigation. I think sometimes when we get in investigations, it can become a checklist. Where were you on this day? Who did you talk to? It can become very mundane, but I think really making sure that you check yourself before you go into those conversations to say, okay, what does this person believe is true? How can I help them make sure they get all the details? Did you have a text that might spur what happened? Was someone there? Who did you talk to? Why did you not feel you could talk to anybody? And coming from a place of understanding all the way to, when you're having those tough conversations, getting their side and saying, hey, I'd love to understand why you made this decision. And let's figure out what we can do differently next time. I think all of that it kind of goes back to what you were saying about creating a respectful and inclusive environment during this very tough process. Let's be honest. Nobody wants to get a call from HR, not even me. And I'm in HR, right? Like it's got such a negative connotation. So how do you create a positive or the most positive experience from that very negative gut feeling?
Also, when issue is first reported, throughout the interviewing process to the final determination, to the final destination, there must be some procedures and protocols to be followed, right?
Yeah.
So could you guide us through the step-by-step process of a typical workplace investigation, Jennifer?
Yeah, I think it depends on what you're talking about. If it's like a wage an hour, something about theft, those are a little different. Those can be a little more tactical because you're looking at some of the data, you're looking at records, punch in, punch out, you're looking at bank records, things like that. But if you're talking one strictly involving a he said, she said, or somebody saw something, things like that, I think the first thing is making sure, however you get the information, that you have all of it at that point, knowing that you're going to have to talk to people. I think I say that I love this, the 5 Ps. Proper planning prevents poor performance. And I think that's so important because you have got to plan your strategy going into this investigation. So you get a complaint, you need to write out, okay, who do I need to talk to? What do I need to talk to them about? And what order am I going to talk to them in? Let's say you get a complaint from an employee directly, or they post on social media. You need to talk to that person first and get every single detail that you possibly can, and then reassure them that you'll loop back with them. Then from there, talk to everybody else in the middle to get as many details as you can. And then the person that the allegations are against would be the very last person that you talk to. And then also informing them, if you can, hey, I've got to reevaluate this whole situation. I will get back to you in 24 hours or whatever that looks like, so that they understand that also. But I think also one of the things that I would encourage people to do during your workplace investigations outside of just the process is do not make a determination until you have all the facts at the very end. It is so hard. It's not human nature. The whole time you're like, oh, I think they did it. Oh, I don't think they did it. But if you can truly just be curious throughout the investigation until the very end, then review all the facts and make your determination, you're always going to make a better decision.
Yeah, that's a comprehensive overview of the procedure, and I'm sure our listeners appreciate the clarity. But of course, such investigations are rarely this straightforward and not as easy as we are discussing now. So based on your experiences, Jennifer, what potential hurdles or challenges are there that HRs encounter during this investigation?
I think the hardest part is one, you're dealing with somebody's career or somebody's life, and it's very emotionally triggering for everybody involved.
True.
I might say this person harassed me, and what I view as harassment, they might not. So I think one, acknowledging the emotion that's going to be involved and understanding it's not personal. It's about you're dealing with people. I think that's the first thing. So making sure that you can have a sound mind when you're having these conversations, because I'll tell you what, there have been times during investigations I have just wanted to cry my eyes out because your heart just breaks for people and how they felt. And so I think that's the first thing. I think the second hurdle you're never going to be 100% on your decision. There's no way. You are not there. You don't know what happened. There is the potential that information could come out after that person leaves, you have the conversation, whatever it is. But I got really great advice during my career that was, if a reporter shows up on your doorstep and asks you about this decision, would you be able to speak in confidence or speak confidently that you made the right decision? And so when I have those really tough cases where I'm just like, God, I just don't know this. I feel like there's something else. You can what if for the, forever. But knowing if you feel like you have a solid case that you're 90% there, I really feel like you're never going to be 100%. So do the best you can and use that as your gut check. But I do think those are some challenges, because you still are dealing with people's lives, and that's hard.
These challenges definitely need careful navigation, isn't it? And when you speak about fairness and careful handling, how does an HR professional ensure the fair treatment and privacy of all parties involved during an investigation?
Yeah, so I get this a lot with regards to, you're not going to tell anybody that I said this, right? And I tell them all the time, I will do everything to try to make sure that you can stay as anonymous as possible. However, I cannot guarantee that. There's just no way, because if I am asking about a situation involving two people at a very specific time, the other person's probably going to figure it out. What I can do, though, is everybody I talk about the retaliation. I say, so the person that's alleging, I say, if you feel like you're treated differently for any reason after this conversation, I need you to call me immediately. And the same goes for the person that, the allegations might be against. I'll say, hey, I know this is really tough. I know that anybody can say anything. That's why my job is to help figure out what the truth is. But please, please, please do not treat this person differently or these people differently because of these concerns. You will be fired. So really making sure that everybody understands their lane and what those guardrails are, and that I am doing everything I can to protect everybody, because that's the truth. I think that's really important. And then for the fair treatment, to me, fair treatment means that you give everybody a chance to tell their side and provide all the details that they can. I think that is what fair means in investigations.
So this kind of situations, Jennifer, it influences the overall perceptions of justice and fairness in the organizations, right? Because if you say that we cannot guarantee that someone won't know about the allegations against you, it is a matter of concern, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But the way I phrase it to them is I say, if someone said you were doing something that you didn't, I think you would want a chance to tell your side. And they say yes, and say, okay. Again, everybody can tell everything. Everybody can say anything, but you still have to have the opportunity to give your truth. And that's what we need to provide. That's what's fair. But we will do everything in our power to make sure you are treated the same during this investigation. I do ask, I say, I would prefer you don't talk to anybody about this, because that does muddy the investigation. If I can't do a clean investigation because you're talking to everybody, then that's your choice and I can't come to a fair outcome. So that's kind of how I frame it up. But again, to your point, not everybody is going to agree with you. They're just not.
So it's clear that these issues of confidentiality and fairness are critical, very critical in these situations. And so if we discuss the outcomes now, once an investigation concludes, how are the findings typically communicated to the relevant parties? Like what is the importance of transparency in this process?
Yeah. So I think the person the allegations are against, obviously I prefer to communicate the outcome to them first, whether that's termination, final counseling, coaching, whatever, because that's who is the person that is most impacted. From there, I like to follow up with every single person I talk to and say that while I cannot disclose the outcome of the investigation, because they wouldn't want someone else to know if they were coached or fired or whatever the case is. What I can promise them is that it has been handled, it has been fully investigated, and that if there are any further problems, I am here to help. I think that's the best you can do, is really provide a resource for them if they have other concerns, and assure them that you have done everything in your power to make sure that they're protected, or, whatever the outcome should be. Now, a lot of people will push and say, well, I want to know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I say to them directly, I'll say, would you want everyone knowing if you got a coaching for this allegation? And they would say no. Say, okay, that goes both ways, but it's tough. It takes some conversation.
Yeah. There, I think, comes the role of, trusting your employees as well as trusting the employer mm-hmm. by the employees, right? So it is a crucial thing after an investigation's result. So thinking in a preventive manner now, I'm sure that a supportive and respectful workplace culture helps prevent issues that might lead to investigations.
Yeah, I think this was the big part of, when I was running a big employee relations department, this was the part I focused on with my team, because it is so easy to get caught up in the casework and, this case is closed and I have to close cases in this many days. And this is why, I have this many cases to do, things like that. What I said is I want you to take a step back. And if you have a large caseload, how can you prevent it from getting there in the first place? So using data, which is kind of uncommon for this field, using data to say, okay, I have had 5 workplace investigations from this particular area. That is significant. So what training am I going to do to help this group of employees understand what needs to be done? What are the common areas they're struggling with? I think training and having direct conversation is always the best way to go, but using the data to inform what you need to address. Because if you throw everything at everybody and see what sticks to the wall, they're going to zone you out. But I think being very intentional about what you're talking to groups about, it is the most proactive that you can get. And then I think always creating open door. A lot of times these people don't know you. When I was running the employee relations department, we were doing all of our investigations remotely. We were a voice on the phone. They had no idea who we were. And so I think making sure that you create an open door with everybody you interact with. Hey, I'm Jennifer, I'm with HR. This is how I can, add value to your life. If this is what I can help you with anytime you interact with someone, because those interactions stick with people. And so if you have those interactions one-off, they're going to be more likely to trust you, even if they have no idea who you are. Or they're going to call a friend and say, hey, who's this Jennifer girl? And they'll be like, oh, I met her once. She's great. I had a great interaction. So I think those are 2 things that you can do to get ahead of it.
Yeah. So Jennifer, to wrap up things today, given all we have discussed, could you please provide some practical advice or best practices for HR professionals to handle workplace investigations, ensuring that all the parties feel respected, supported, and ultimately that justice is served?
Yeah, I think in any investigations role, the biggest thing you can do is work on your own mindset. You're never going to be able to control what other people do. You're never going to be able to control what other people can say. But what you can do is that you can be a student of the business. You can listen to podcasts like this. You can go online and look up best practices for investigations. Heck, now with ChatGPT, you can go in there and plug in a bunch of information and get a framework if you're not sure. If you're unsure about an investigation, practice it with people. Practice it with your peers. I think being humble and understanding that no matter how many times you do this, it is hard. It's always hard. I've been doing it for 10 years, specifically investigations for the past 7. It's tough. I don't know if it ever gets easier. You just get a little more comfortable with the structure. So I think working on yourself and being a student and continuing to understand your own mind and what triggers you and causes you to jump to conclusions in investigations, that's the best thing that you can do for your company.
So what I have realized is this topic is something that we can go on talking about. I don't know if you have covered approx 50% of what we can discuss. But I'm sure that our audience is happy and contented with what we just did in this conversation. So there might be chances that they want to connect with you for any further discussion, maybe. So would you like to tell how our listeners can reach out to you?
Absolutely. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's Jennifer Watson. My main name is Newbill, and like Nancy, EUV like Virginia, ILLE, because there are a bunch of Jennifer Watsons. But reach out to me. I'm on there all the time looking for great talent. But if you need anything at all, I would love to just, shoot some messages, see how I can add value to you all.
I'll be linking to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes, Jennifer. So hoping that we connect once again with this particular topic with some other exciting questions and interesting pointers. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining me today in this episode.
Of course. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and our YouTube channel for new episodes.